field digs, archaeological digs on that one. Let's go. I was like, oh, it's being recorded. Okay, so I was doing that, and then I came out here to UCLA, and the so I'm doing both. I'm doing my trying to get my doctorate in, not trying. I'm doing it, getting my doctorate at UCLA, and also pursue the acting thing. So that's a tough struggle trying to live in both worlds, but you do what you got to do, right? You got to follow your passions. So what else background I need to talk about? I'm Apache, descendant of Geronimo. How many people here know who Geronimo is? Hope everybody. I'm sure some of the younger generations like who, because no, if it's not in the movie, it's not in the theater. Nobody knows who it is if it's not in the movies. Although they do have a movie, Geronimo, an American Legend, where Matt Damon was in, and I know everybody knows Matt Damon, Robert Duvall, Jason Patrick. Okay, never mind. Nobody's a big fan of Matt Damon. All right then, let's move on.
Please tell me he wasn't
Okay,
playing
so
Geronimo, right? He wasn't playing
no,
Geronimo.
he wasn't. West
Good,
Studi.
good.
Yeah, West Studi played Geronimo. He was a
Okay.
cavalry guy. So yeah. No, they although Hollywood has done that. So I mean, Chuck Connors played Geronimo. Everybody knows who Chuck Connors is, the rifleman. He's like
Yep.
tall, huge
No, no,
white dude.
no.
so so yeah. Well, Google it later, and you'll see how Hollywood used to portray us. We were tall. So uh, and then they just put the makeup on you to make you look tan because you're all supposed to be out in the sun all the time. So, uh, oh, there's a chat right there. I just saw it. So that's my background. I guess so that I'm here today to talk about my research, which is storytelling and how it's the cultural method for indigenous in learning. And everybody's like, storytelling? What's storytelling? Well, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked. Storytelling is not what you think. Like when they think storytelling in indigenous, they think, oh, he's about to tell us about the stories about, oh, the cow jumped over the moon and the coyote went. No, those are mythology folklore stories. What I'm talking about is what's called, it's a new methodology and a theoretical approach is phenomenology. So phenomenology is the life experiences that we've all lived through up until the moment that anything happens that leads us to make the decisions and our perceptions on the situation that's happening right then. That's how we learn is through our life experiences. And life experiences, like, I mean, we all do it, not just indigenous. You all do it without realizing that you're doing it. So we all practice phenomenology because every time you meet somebody and you talk about, like I did it already when I came on here when I was telling you about myself and about UCLA. I'm already teaching through my life experience of getting my PhD at UCLA. So you're already learning about UCLA. So and that was teaching you through my life experience. So that's phenomenology. It gets kind of confusing because it's a methodology at the same time it's a theoretical approach. So, and it's a new one. So even some of my professors are like, I was more of an expert on phenomenology than they were. So I was teaching them. So it's a new type of thing, but it's becoming more common now. I'm surprised that psychologists aren't using it more often either, because that feels like I feel like that would be a big part of psychology. So I dealt with life experience. So and the thing is, I got like I was doing research already with the Navajo, what they'd like to call Dene is what the term they like to use now. But working with the Dene, but I was working on a chemistry project with a professor at NMSU because as everybody, well, I don't know if everybody knows, but in World War II, they were doing uranium mining on the Navajo, the Dene reservation. And so all the aquifers, the water aquifers were contaminated with uranium 239, not the 238 kind, which is the plutonium kind of stuff, but the 239, which is a radioactive isotope, was in the water. And then when you drink the water, now you're drinking radioactive isotopes and you develop tumors, cancer, diabetes. So, I mean, there's other things that contribute to diabetes other than that, but So I was already working on that, and we developed a way to take the uranium out of the water so you could have drinking water like a Brita filter using traditional indigenous knowledge. So it was the clay in the ground because the earth takes care of itself. It already has things in place that filter out the uranium. The problem is the clay in the ground, it takes like 1,000 years because it's so saturated with uranium that it's going to take 1,000 years before it filters it all out. Well, who here is going to live 1,000 years? I mean, I know my spirit is immortal, but this body's not going to last 1,000 years. Although it probably looks like I'm still 16, but I'm just kidding. It's just kidding. I wish, I wish. so, but so because of that, they need to come up with a way that can abate the uranium out of the water. Because the sad fact of it is that people are still drinking the water. Because if you've ever been to a Navajo reservation, it's all desert. And a lot of towns are so far away from the bigger cities, which there's very little big cities like we consider a big city, that they don't have water there. So how do you get water to them? Well, they go to a well and they fill up big 55-gallon drums and they pump the water out. And now there's a sign there that says EPA says not drinkable for human consumption, but the animals can drink it. But what happens if the animals drink it? Like the cows and cow, well, you're eating them, so you're still getting the radiation, the radioactive isotope by eating the animals who's drinking the contaminated water. But people still drink the water because if you're thirsty, you got to drink. So, and it's not like you drink it, oh, all of a sudden I'm dying. No, it's not that. So it happens to you over a period of years. So it's a gradual effect. You know, the whole analogy of you put a frog in water, he won't jump out. He'll sit there and then as it's burning and heating up, and then he boils to death. But if you throw him in the water's already hot, he jumps out. So that's kind of the same analogy that's going on with that. So when I was doing that, I say, well, okay. Then I started doing research. Another professor was looking at gardening as to prevent diabetes because what I've done in my research and the medical research is the two primary things that can prevent diabetes is a healthy diet and exercise. Well, if you've been to the reservation, well, you should go there one time to the Dene reservation. So you can drive on there and check it out. But you're in the desert. How are you going to grow fresh vegetables in desert sand? It doesn't happen. So how are they going to get fresh fruit and vegetables so they can eat a healthier diet? Well, they have to drive sometimes 100 miles off the res just to be able to go to a Walmart that just happens to be there. Well, when you're on a budget, as some of you may know, that you can only spend what you have. So you try to get the bargains. And normally, the less expensive stuff is not the healthiest stuff. So that's what you have to eat. And if you're out in the desert, you don't want to do a lot of exercise because it's so hot. So you want to just remain still so you're not burning energy. So sitting there, you're not exercising, you're not burning off the energy and the fat. So it just accumulates. Next thing you know, you're overweight, you're not exercising, the heart starts feeling the pressure, and you can end up with diabetes. And the last I checked, the diabetes rate on Dene Reservation was almost up to 70% of the population. That's a lot of cases of diabetes. And if any of you have done any research or heard about, I mean, diabetes can lead to heart attacks, amputations, glaucoma, where go by. So those are not pleasant symptoms. So I was like, well, how are we going to address this? Because I looked at the medical science, and I looked at the IHS, was the Indian Health Services, and the brochures they put in there all the science and say, yes, you need to do this, you need to do that. But the thing is, you can't apply a general method to everybody. You have to look at the culture and the environment where they live. And then once you do that, now you can develop a way to educate them on how this can work for you. So what I was doing was like, well, what's the best way for indigenous to learn, specifically Dene? And I did a initial initial stage, the first stage of the dissertation. So I did a study to find out. I asked them just general questions, and when I was asking them about stuff, they would tell me. I mean, I'm going to do a shameless plug right here, but I got to do it. There's a book, Storytelling, Indigenous Learning Method. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble by Jaime Geronimo Vela. This was the this is the outcome of my first study. Sorry, it's a shameless plug. I had to do it so that way, I know some people. I know there's one person at least on here that's read it. So and so, but I did that first phase where I did the study, and that's how when they were telling me about certain things that they knew and learned, it was through their own life experiences. So I used another thing called narrative profiling by Seidman. It wasn't, I didn't come up with it. It was Seidman that came up with it. But I used it because I was able to piece together a story of them telling uh, in their own words. So they have a story there, but it's all in their own words pieced together. So that way it's a learning. And so whoever's reading it can learn through their life experience in their own words. So I mean, obviously I asked a bunch of questions and it was all, but I pieced it all together so that it flows nicely and it turns out to be a nice story that they're talking about. So that's where it comes from the narrative profile. So although I'm trying to think of a different name because I'm developing a different kind of method than that, it's kind of, but it's hard to come up with a name and still have the name mean uh, what method you're using. So that's tough. I'm still working on it. I got time. I'm not doing my dissertation yet. So, but I see there's a chat. Did somebody ask a question on there, Allison? No. Oh, you're on mute. Okay, but
No, you're good.
okay, okay. All right. So that got me thinking. I did that first phase, and then I found out. I confirmed that that's the way they learn is through storytelling. So then once I had my methodology, which is phenomenology, and you guys could look it up. It's pretty interesting information. I mean, some of you, it might be kind of boring, but I mean, if you're in anthropology, and you're cultural, it's not really going to apply if you're archaeology because you're dealing with the material artifacts. Can't really interview a material artifact really and ask them questions, expect to answer. So like people do. But sometimes I wish I would have went archaeology because trying to set up interviews with people can be a real pain because their schedule, your schedule, and then finding people that will actually do it with that because it's if I was to pay them, obviously I'd have more people that would jump at the chance. But as a grad student, you don't make a lot of money, so can't really pay anybody, so they have to do it for free. So that's just life. So it makes it more difficult when you're dealing with people and people's schedules. So and right now with the COVID pandemic thing going on, now you can't even go anywhere to interview anybody. So that really makes it hard to get your research done. So it's another obstacle to deal with. So that's why my dissertation is kind of
I imagine
faltering
you
a little
might
bit.
have difficulty as well trying to do interviews over Zoom in terms of technology and stability of internet access. Is that true, or what do you think?
Well, no, that's true. And the thing is, a lot of people don't have access to Zoom and internet, especially on the reservation. Uh, they're lucky to have internet at all in a lot of locations on the res. So I mean, that's one thing that they are trying to work on is broadband. They're trying to give access to everybody, which has been an ongoing project. I mean, that project was still going on when I was in Las Cruces at MSU, and they're still trying to work on it and find a way to get broadband to everybody on the res because it's kind of hard when uh, you're like 50 to 100 miles away from one city. That's a lot of wire and cable to lay to get from one town to the other. So that's a big expense. And of course, I don't know if the money's there or not. It may be, but it seems like there'd be an easier way to do it. than other than laying cable, but I don't know. I'm not a technician or cable guy, so but I just feel like there would be an easier way to do it. You don't need to lay cable down, but I don't know. That's not my expertise, so I don't know what's going on with that. But yeah, I mean, when you're in cultural, you do rely on interviewing people. Although archaeology would be a whole lot easier because I just go to a site and do a dig. Oh, I got the artifacts. Now I just do the history on it and everything. Good. I got my research done. Yay. And I do it at my own pace so I can get it done. So archaeology would be easier, yes. But I like dealing with people. I like talking to people and learning about different cultures. So that's why I do cultural. It has obstacles, but it's more rewarding in the end as far as I'm concerned, in my own opinion. But does anybody have any questions so far? Let me just throw that out there right there at this point.
So you've mentioned obstacles. Do you ever have
Yes,
to
sir.
getting people to open up to you, especially because I know a fair bit of I know a fair amount of natives, and they're not exactly the biggest fans of anthropology, because they're often used as like sort of subjects for study. So do you ever encounter difficulty with that?
I'm glad you brought that up because yes, I did. In the beginning, I'm Apache. In the beginning, the closest res to me was Mescalero Apache. So I says, oh, well, let me go try to contact them and maybe I can do some research with them. Oh no, that I was an outsider. I didn't grow up there. So they didn't know me. So it was very difficult to try to get them to open up to me at all. And it just turned out that I ended up going with this professor to the Dene res. And at first, they were a little hesitant to me also. So, but after they got to know me after a little while, I had some conversation with them. And when I did, and then they saw where I was coming from, because the minute you say, oh, yes, I'm a PhD student at whatever college you're from, right there, the walls come up because, oh, here they are. They're going to try and do some study on us and say something bad about us because that's the history. That's the history that studies have been done, and they're always got something negative to say. So I don't focus on the negative. I try it to me, it should be about the positive. So yes, I know diabetes is a negative thing, but I'm focusing on the positive of because prevention is the best form, the best method of avoiding
Oh,
diabetes. I'm not here trying to cure diabetes. That's not my field. And from what I hear, there could be some cures out there. They're developing some pretty good science out there. So, but that's not my forte. I'm here to just get the information and present it to them on how they can use these two methods to prevent getting diabetes. I can't do anything about it once they have them. Once they have it, that's out of my league. That they have to go to the doctors for that. I'm not here to try and do that. It's not my goal. I mean, it'd be great if I could. That'd be awesome. I'd love to come up with a cure. Not because I'd be an instant millionaire, but just because think how many lives I could save. So I'm not here to do that. I'm just focusing on prevention. And the thing is, with the prevention, I have to focus on how do you apply the prevention methods in the environment they live in. And who better to answer those questions than people that live on the res? People that have lived on the res, they know those conditions. They know what it's like to live in the desert and live in houses. There are people still living in houses with no electricity or running water. They have to go to the well, even to take a shower. They have to have like when you're camping, that's how they still have to take showers. I mean, I don't get how the American people can drive by these reservations and they just ignore it. It's like we don't exist. We're all over the United States. But why is it we don't get any recognition that we even exist in this country? I mean, we're there. Those some of those reservations are as bad off as third world countries, underdeveloped countries, right here in the U.S. And you're like, what? The U.S.? There's people living in houses with no running water and electricity. Yeah, they're right here. And I have some documentaries out there. If you go to my YouTube page, Geronimo Vela, you'll see in those documentaries where I focus on giving you some of those pictures of those reses and the conditions they live in. I mean, if you see some of these things, it's a four square box basically, where they've taken metal chicken house aluminum sheets, and that's their walls. And they've taken doors and used it up as their walls, and that's what they're living in. But then you say, well, why would you live in those conditions? Why don't you leave? Well, why would you give up your homeland? Would you just give it up? So if you leave, the government's going to come in and take it, and then now you have nothing. You don't have your homeland anymore. So why would you give up your homeland? I wouldn't do it. So you now the thing is that I also, this is a little off topic, but I also feel like the tribal government out there uh, could be doing things a little bit better economically and infrastructure wise to help the people not have to end up living in houses or homes or anything without electricity and running water. We have enough technology out here and advances that, done smartly, they can get it so the people don't have to live like that on the res. But the thing is, like Brody was saying, is like if I go in there and try to tell them anything about how it can work, they don't want to hear it because I'm not Danae. They say, here we go. We got another person from a university coming here telling us how we're supposed to live our life. Well, that's what you run into every time. And you know it's justified. I get it. I mean, they've gone through uh, colonization. They've gone through being forced into boarding schools to where they were beaten and killed to not speak their language and to kill the Indian, save the man type of mentality. So I get where they're coming from. I understand why they have those walls up when it comes to that. But if they go back to the traditional indigenous ways, then it's all about balance. I mean, you can have the balance of both worlds in there. You can have technology and you can have your traditions and use them both. Use that technology to strengthen your culture instead of just pushing it aside. Say, nope, I'm not going to allow you to change us. Well, one thing we're learning in anthropology is cultural adaptation. Your culture has to adapt certain things in their culture to survive in the environment and the culture that you're living in. That doesn't mean you have to lose who you are in your culture, but you have to adapt and evolve in order to survive.
I
I
have
see a
some
lot of
great
chat.
questions for you in the chat box when you're ready.
Uh, okay, did I? All right, well, go ahead. Maybe the questions will answer what I have left to say.
The first one is, so is learning trust a big part of the process in working with communities as an anthropologist?
Yes, it's a very big part. And I know it can seem like a pain in the butt sometimes. Am I allowed to say butt? Is that okay? Is that PG enough? So I mean, I don't know these days, so you got to be careful. So, but yeah, it's a big problem. No matter what community you go into, unless of course I go to a community that I'm already a part of, then that's different. But in anthropology we call it etic and emic. So emic is from the insider's perspective, etic is from the outsider's perspective. So you have different perspectives. So, excuse me, if I'm already a part of that community, then they already know me. So it's easy for me to just go and interview people. But yeah, it doesn't matter where I go, I have to develop a sort of trust, and which can be a little bit of a pain sometimes because when you're trying to get research done and you don't have 6 months or to a year to develop a trust to be able to, it becomes an issue. And I would have had to done that with the Apache Res. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and wait a year to get my research done. So I moved on. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to even deal with it. And I went to the good thing was that the Dene people are so, they're more friendlier in my opinion. and they're more open to outsiders. They'll at least listen to you, and they get to know you. And once they get to know you, then they're very open, because once they got to know me, they were inviting me to ceremonies and stuff. I didn't go to them just because didn't feel comfortable, because I just didn't feel like ceremonies are a very sacred and spiritual thing, and I didn't feel like I was part of the community enough to go to it. So out of honor for them, I didn't go. So, but that's just me. Um, but yeah, it's definitely an obstacle you have to deal with. But I think it's worth it, because you get to learn from that culture once you're in. So, all right, what's the next question?
Uh, do the people on the reservation welcome change? Is there resistance?
Well, that's a tough one, because there are some people that do welcome change, especially the younger generation. But when it comes to the elders, and there's the mid age range, the middle age range, they are more resistant. And I think it's because of the history. They've lived through that history of colonization and oppression. So of course they're a little bit more resistant and mistrustful. So I mean, I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, it's like, it's don't forget what has happened, but you have to find a way to move forward. You can't just live in the past. I mean, the past, you learn from it, but you have to move forward. Otherwise, you, you just can't evolve and survive in the long run. So I think the younger generation is more open to change, because they are like, when I went to the Apache Res, and I saw some of them, because I did like this summer, I was a counselor for a summer thing, and there were indigenous students there, Apaches mainly, and they had technology. They had iPads, everything. They had PSPs, PlayStation portable ones, and I had none of that. I was like, dang, that's, you guys are awesome. I mean, so they're up with the technology. So the younger generation is more, they're more for change, but at the same time, see, they still maintain their culture, because they still have their parents and elders, grandparents still sharing the knowledge of their culture and tradition with them. So they're living the best of both worlds. So I'm hoping the younger generation can have an effect on the older generation and make that change, so lives can be better. Hope that answered the question.
I have
What's the
another
next one?
one. I have a
Question.
comment and then a question. So one of the
Oh, what's the
comments
comment?
from Carolyn says, I feel like when people are saying just leave because it's bad is ignoring how it got bad in the first place, and the trauma that's been caused by the US government that led to the poverty.
Very
Um,
true.
Absolutely. And then this question is, I know that right now you're unable to conduct interviews, but do you anticipate that the pandemic will have greater impacts on the res in terms of the rates of diabetes and other long-term medical conditions?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, I think it's going to have a big effect on higher diabetes rates. I mean, already in the Dene alone, I mean, they've been hit hard with COVID deaths. So, and now because they have less mobility, now they even have less access to any kind of healthy foods or exercise. Well, exercise is relative. You can do a walk around the desert, but when it's hot or freezing out there, who wants to walk around out there? I don't. But now they have less access to food, and especially healthy foods. So I think, yeah, it may end up increasing because of this. So hopefully it doesn't last very much longer, because the Navajo res, the Dene res was even closed. They closed their borders, so you couldn't leave or come in. So where are they getting the food access? It was already limited as it was. Now what are you supposed to do? And the water access is already a big issue for them also. So yeah, this pandemic, I think, is going to have a drastic effect on these reservations, mainly in the desert areas like Arizona and New Mexico.
Um,
So yeah,
sorry, I have like a comment. I read somewhere
yeah,
that actually the Navajo Nation was the largest like population by race that was affected by COVID. Like they have the highest rates relative to like other races who got it. I forgot where I read that though.
Yeah, well, let's keep it in perspective though. I mean, it's based on population size. So, I mean, their population is not as big as the other races. So, when they get hit with 1,000 or 2,000 deaths, that's going to come out like 20%. So, it's all relative to the amount of population. So, let's say the white population is, I don't know how many millions, but then you only have 100,000 deaths. That's still only going to come out to be like 5% just because of the ratio. Now, granted, you have to keep in perspective too that because their population is not as much as everybody else, to lose that amount of people is a bigger hit. So, so I think that data is relevant because they don't have that many population to begin with compared to other races. So you can't really take a hit of 4 or 5,000 or however much it is of people dying because you don't have that big of a population. So you got to make sure that you conserve those numbers.
Well, and it could
So
also
yeah, it's
be related to being far away from doctors, medical care, subpar medical care that could be available in the area, not having the running water, all of that too could maybe play into some of it.
it does. I mean, it's no secret. Well, I guess it is a secret, but Indian Health Services on the res, you don't get the best quality healthcare there. So, and the thing is, like, there's not a Indian Health Services healthcare in every little town on the res. So you could be 200 miles away from the nearest Indian Health Service. Well, how are you going to get there? It's 200 miles away. It's 100 miles away. You imagine having to drive 100 miles to get to the hospital? I mean, so you don't go a lot. So by the time you go and able to go, it may be too late already. You already got it and it's a worst case. So, and you're right, without running water, you don't have electricity. So how you producing heat? I mean, how you produce an air conditioner? You're dealing with 120-degree heat out there. So yeah, those conditions are just playing into the pandemic. So it's not good. Uh, what was the next question? I like answering questions.
I think that's all the questions I have in the chat box. I don't know if any
Oh, that's
other
it.
questions that they want to ask.
Who has some questions for me?
I have a couple actually, but I'll start off with this one since we're still on the topic of um, healthcare on the res.
Yeah,
If conditions like diabetes were more successfully addressed in the past, the death toll on the reservations might have been lower.
that is correct. Because I mean that is a big issue that the knowledge is not getting out to everybody on the res. I mean, unless you go to Indian Health Services, you're not getting the brochures. You're not talking to anybody. Now, granted, you can go to the chapter houses, but the chapter houses, when they meet once a month, I mean, I don't think that's knowledge is even being spread on there. So there's no widespread communication system set up in place that it gets to everybody on the res. And people live out some places so far away that they have no contact with any kind of medical knowledge or any pamphlets or anything going on. And it costs money, but to me, it shouldn't cost that much money to get out pamphlets to everybody. But then who's going to read it? I mean, you sitting here in the city, you got people handing you when you're walking by in the street, handing you all kinds of these flyers and brochures. And what does most people do? In the trash. Because if it doesn't pertain to their own life and how they're living, what good is it going to do you? Because you can tell anybody, yes, healthy diet, exercise. Okay, yeah, I get it. Healthy diet and exercise. Well, how are you going to help me achieve that? What can I do to achieve that? Well, that's where the knowledge has to come in. Is what can you do? And that's what my research is trying to do. So part of my research is to develop the story and from their own words and from interviewing people, and I'm going to produce another documentary, a short documentary that can help them uh, see how, based on their culture and how they live on the res, how they can apply getting healthy foods, doing the exercise, how they can apply that to the environment and their lives that they live on the res. I'm not trying to say that, hey, go to the gym. I mean, I don't even know if there is a gym on the res. So how are you going to go to a gym if there's not one there? And then who's going to open up a gym because they can't afford to go pay a gym membership? So not like you can in the city. Well, city here is pretty expensive anyways. It's LA, but gym memberships aren't cheap here either. So, but you get my meaning. It's like, if you don't have access to these resources, how can you tell them that's what you have to do? So that's what my research is trying to do, is develop a documentary, and I'm publishing about it, I'll publish a little book on it too. But as I've learned also, people are more visual learning. If you give them a short video, they're apt to watch it and listen to that than sit here and read a 100-page book. I mean, I do the same thing. I'd rather watch a 10, 15-minute video to give me the abridged version instead of reading a 100-page book giving me all the details. Now, if I feel like I need to know more details, I'll go get the book. But at least give me the brief overview on a video. And when you have people, I mean, with the pandemic, I can't really go out and interview people and film them. So I kind of have to do a sound recording, and then I'll use visuals and then me narrating and, telling the story myself, because I can film myself, social distance myself. How do I social distance myself? So I can film myself. So that's what I'll end up having to do. But once that happens, I feel like I can get the DVDs out to the res, and at least one in every chapter house. So when they come to the meeting, they can all watch the chapter house. It's a way to build community also when you watch it. So that's my goal.
I have another
I
interesting
don't know.
one about the pandemic. So at the
Okay.
beginning of the pandemic, there was some conflict among Americans of different political backgrounds on whether or not wearing masks should be mandated. Were there similar kind of resistance to wearing masks on any of the reservations that you've worked with? Is there any emerging storytelling regarding masks?
That's a good question. I like that question. Uh, yes, there were, just like out here, there were mixed opinions on mandatory mask wearing. There were mixed opinions. Some people said that no, what's the point? There's no point in it. And the other people were like, no, you need to wear it. You need to wear it. So, and I don't know whether or not that was an effect on why the rates grew so much, or why they had such a high rate of people getting COVID. I don't know. I don't know the date on that. But you know what? I'm pretty sure there are stories developing from this. I guarantee there has to be, because because especially the ones that were affected and families had family members die from this. There's going to be a lot of stories developing from that, and that'd be a great research for another anthropologist to do. That would be awesome if they could do that, because I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of stories that deals with human behavior and the pandemic, because there's a whole lot of factors. Like, you have government telling you one thing, you got the tribal government telling you one thing, you have the internet telling you one thing. And what if they don't have access to internet? Where are they getting their information from? Or are they getting information about it at all? That'd be a lot of good things to try and figure out on the res, because if you don't have internet, some people don't even have TV. So how are you going to find out any information on it other than when you hear it from your neighbor, who happens to probably be 10 miles away? So, I mean, that's a good question. That would be great, but I guarantee there's got to be stories developing when it comes to that. That's actually a good idea for a documentary once this pandemic thing is over. So all you anthropologists out there, go ahead and do it. Somebody do it. I got to focus on getting mine done, so I can't do it. So
I have another
Nomi's
one.
next. She can do it.
What types of communities have you been able to experience and do your research on?
Well, mainly Dene. Here in LA, Southern California was the Chumash and the Tongva. I've had some dealings with them, and the Dene and different Apache reservations like San Carlos, uh, Mescalera. I've been there. So, and the Pueblos. So the Hopis up in the Pueblos, I've actually interacted with them. But for the most part, it's been with Dene, the Navajo. So yeah, and they're all different. Let me tell you, they're all different.
Another great one. What role do you think the tribal government should play in both the diabetes problem and the COVID problem?
They should play a big part in it because they have access to all the resources, all the funds that they can take action to do something to get out to the people on the res. They have access to it. So they have the power and the ability to take charge, get out there, get the information out there to them. I mean, even if you have to have people just drive around to the communities and just get the information out there, then send people out there. That's their job to go do it. They have the resources to do it. So they should be taking an active part in taking care of their people. That's what they're for. And plus, they're the only ones that get to deal with the US government. So they should definitely be focusing on getting whatever aid they can from the government to help them deal with this crisis and then pass that on to their people. But that it really should all come from the tribal government because the federal government, they're not going to do anything about it. So if the tribal government doesn't go to them, trust me, the government's not coming to them. It's not going to happen. So that's just, I'm not trying to say anything bad about the government. I'm just saying that's just the way it is. That's the relationship that it is. It's just the way it is.
Rebecca says, didn't the federal government take months to get the supplies to the tribes?
That is correct. Yes. It wasn't a priority because here's the thing. Here's their perception. I mean, this happens on every bit of industry. They see that we're barely 1% of the population. So their mentality is like, well, we need to focus on the bigger populations because they're more in need. So that's where all the resources go. And they say, well, we'll get to the tribes when we can after we hit the bigger populations. Well, so I don't think that's a good way to operate. A death is a death. It doesn't matter what race or where you're at or what the population is. So I think that was their mentality is you got to focus on the bigger populations, the bigger cities like LA, Atlanta, New York, big areas that are hit. So they're like, well, the tribes, especially some tribes, they barely have like 7,000, 10,000 people. They don't care about getting resources to them. And granted, that's why the Navajo got hit so hard in the beginning because they didn't have any resources and they weren't dealing with anything until finally through the internet and media, they started getting attention and needed help. And then that's when the government finally says, okay, I guess we have to go address this. Well, it shouldn't take that. But that's the mentality. Let's take care of the masses first and we'll get to them. I mean, they're so low in population, who cares?
Do you think maybe there's a role for allies, people who are off the reservation that are saying like, what can we do to help and make sure that this issue comes to maybe the state level or something like that to try and get maybe state level funding?
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, because here's the thing: there's a relationship between tribes, reservations, and the state. State's not very happy that they don't have control over reservations. They don't like that. They don't have power over it. They can't make any decisions on the res. The federal government can, but the state government cannot. So there's already this uh, friction of a relationship between the state government and tribal government. So when the tribe goes to the state to say, hey, we can use some help, the state's like, well, You don't let us go in there and do anything, so why should we help you? So I mean, so there's a friction of a relationship there. I think there should be a better relationship between the tribal government and the state. But the problem is the history has shown that when tribes try to get the state involved in stuff, the state comes in, they want to take over. So if they want to come in and take over, and every time you give them an inch and they want to take a mile, so eventually you're going to say, you know what? No, we're just not even going to deal with them anymore. And so now that's the, unfortunately, that's the relationship that kind of goes between the state and the tribes, the reservations. So I hope hopefully it gets better, but we'll see. Hopefully the government, well, I don't know if the federal government's going to do anything about it, but the tribes just need to go to the federal government if they want any kind of aid. That's where they should go to first, because uh, that's the relationship that's been set up with the between the government and the tribal reservation is a caretaker mentality. The federal government is our caretakers, and they've always had been. They set up the system that way because that's one thing. The tribes are considered sovereign. Oh yeah, but they're not fully sovereign because the Congress made sure they put in there that they always have power over the res. The state doesn't have any power over them, but the government, federal government, always does. They can come in, Congress can come in and say, nope, you got to do this. You don't have a choice. So they left that plenary power, plenary, basically meaning full power over them. That's always in there. So the Congress knows that at any time, if they don't like what the res is doing, they can come in there and shut them down. So, which the state's like, they're in our state. We should have power over them too. Well, no, now you got two governments trying to take what you have. So, yeah, you should definitely do some research on that. Big, that's a big issue with the sovereignty right now between the tribes, reservations, and the government. Well, because you know what reservations were initially, they were prisons. Reservations were prisons for the Native Americans. They weren't allowed to leave without asking permission. You imagine that? You're in a prison. You cannot leave this area unless I give you permission. If you left, you got shot. That's a prison. So,
Topic,
and eventually, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just
Go
gonna
ahead. Sorry, bro.
say, on the topic of the history of reservations, this is just something that I've heard a lot, and I was wondering if you could give any confirmation about that. The Nazis gaining the idea of concentration camps from America's treatment of Native Americans and the creation of reservations.
I can confirm that is true. I've done the research on that because, uh, I'm trying to learn from history and human behavior. That's what anthropology is, study of history and human behavior. So, yes, Hitler and the Nazis got their idea of that from the way the US did the Native Americans and how successful it was. So that's why I get a little perturbed every time I watch the news and they're talking about this is a land of immigrants. We took, we settled and created this government because based by immigrants. Yeah, you killed everybody and took what you wanted. That's what this land was based on. Not that somebody moved over here and says, hey, I'm your new neighbor. No, you came over here because of manifest destiny, because God ordained that your people are the better people of the world. So you can just go and take whatever you want as long as they're primitive and savage and uneducated. So they came here and just took whatever they want. And if they wouldn't move, they killed you and just took it anyways. Well, I wonder where they got that idea from. Let me see. America did it. But yet, how come that's not recognized anywhere? Nobody ever mentions it. Oh, they put down other countries for doing it, but America did it. I'm not sure well, I don't think America did it first because there were genocide practices already in Europe and other countries before, but not on the scale that America did it till Hitler came along, and then it was a similar scale. But yeah, that's where Hitler got the idea. I mean, So yeah, and as if you realize a history on Hitler, he also was a big fan of, you know, Native Americans are known for this whole spirituality in connection with the earth and everything. Hitler was a big uh, proponent of that. He was always doing research and trying to find those spirit magic stuff and everything based on the Native Americans traditions and beliefs and values. So yeah, he was like, yes, let me follow what America did to them, but at the same time, I want to find all their magical powers that they have with Earth. I mean, because supposedly, I guess Native Americans all have magical powers. I mean, I wish I did. That would be cool, but I mean, maybe they did back then, but I don't think they do much right now. But you know, I mean, colonization has kind of messed our brains up a little bit, almost like everybody else now at this point. But they're trying to bring back those traditions and that culture, so which is good. I hope they bring it back. All right. Any other questions? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I
Rebecca
keep
posted
talking.
a link about a podcast. So she said there's a great podcast for those who want to learn about tribal sovereignty and more about the
Mm,
relationship of the tribal and the federal government. So she posted a link to a podcast. So if any of you are interested, you can click on that chat box and then copy and paste it into something, and then you'll be able to
good.
check it out. It sounds like that's really fantastic.
Nice. Yeah, let me give a plug here out for UCLA Department of Anthropology for anybody that wants to go to grad school. I don't know if maybe you guys are already in grad school or undergrads, or anybody wants to pursue their PhD. The UCLA's got a great department over there. I mean, as far as social justice goes, they recognize all cultures and they are receptive to it and everything. They're great faculty and department there.
I know there's also a big Navajo language revitalization movement that's been going on. When you and I lived in New Mexico, they started teaching Navajo classes at NMSU, for instance. And I know in
That's true.
LA, and you can also learn Navajo on Duolingo. And down in LA, they have Navajo language meetup groups as well.
Yeah, and it's on Rosetta Stone too.
Yeah.
So they're definitely, which I think is great. It'd be good to uh, learn some Navajo language. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. I prefer learning Spanish over that. It's Spanish is a whole lot easier, in my opinion. In my opinion, so uh, it's easier to pronounce, easier to understand the meaning. I mean, with the native languages, especially Apache, because I did a part where I had to speak Apache in it, and I had to learn it. And like I've memorized Shakespeare when I've done theater, and it was really hard to learn the Apache language and memorize it because at the same time that you memorize the language, you also have to memorize what they mean in English. So that way you given the proper emotion and inflection and everything and what the message you're saying. So it was tough. It was tough. I mean, I only had like 5 or 6 lines, but it took me like 6 hours to memorize it. And Shakespeare, it takes me less time. So it's a tough language. It's not easy, but it would be awesome if I did learn it. I wish I would have learned it when I was young, but now, when your brain gets older, it's always harder to learn languages. Not that I'm old or anything, I'm just saying.
Shaylee says that she's read a whole bunch of books on Geronimo, so she thinks it's really, really great that you're here talking, and that, lots of respect there.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Thank you. You rock. You rock. Yeah, I'm trying to live up to I know he gets a bad rap with oh, he was such a warrior killer and everything, but he was only fighting for his freedom. Isn't that what the colonists did? 1776, Independence Day. They wanted their right to be free, and they fought against the English government, the British government. So, I mean, they just wanted to be free. They didn't want to be put in a prison on a reservation. They weren't even allowed to go hunt. So they had to be provided food and blankets and everything else. And then of course people would abuse them. And you've heard all the story of the smallpox blankets, of course. So nobody wants to be treated like they're an invalid.
And
So
Martha
yeah, he
wants to
just,
thank you for all the great information that you've shared.
oh, thank you. I appreciate it. No, I like doing this stuff. This is awesome. Hopefully it was helpful or you learned something. Did I even talk about my research? I don't remember.
Yes. Does anybody have any final questions before we head off? For Jamie, you can either unmute your mic, or if you type them in the text box, I can read them out for him.
I have a question. I'm not sure if you answered this already, but I was wondering, when you were talking about the uranium in the water, I was wondering how long that was going on for, when you visited, and what was like, was there anything being done to deal with that by like the government or anything?
Yeah, good question, because that took place in World War II, which was what, 1942 or something like that, 1945. So it was ended. So that contamination has been there this whole time. And the thing is when they dumped out the waste, they dumped it right on top of the soil. So the wind would blow it, and now they were blowing all this radiation. They went out and took, because they built adobe houses, they went out and did Geiger counters, and it was all radioactive. So they had to tear down everybody's house, and nobody could live there. So the water contamination has been there for 50, 60 years. And when we tried to introduce the knowledge of how we can get rid of the uranium and make potable water, they didn't want to hear it. And then now at this point, the tribal government is in the state is allowing them to do uranium mining again. They gave them permission to do the mining again. And here's the problem. You have some of the people on the res saying, oh, it's great. It's great. It'll create more jobs. And other people is like, no, you're still going to be killing us with uranium contamination. So, I mean, is the money worth it? Oh, and they say, oh, well, we've developed better methods of disposal. No, they still they put a layer of clay in the ground and they dump it. It still seeps in to the water. So it's not any different of a method. It's not any better of a method. So there's the problem. It's like you have capitalism of infecting people's decisions, even on the res. So some people will say, yeah, let's do it because it would create jobs and we all go to work. And other people is like, yeah, but you're still going to continue to kill us because nothing's really being done. There's a super fund that's supposed to be dealing with taking care of the contamination of $100 million in the Navajo res, and none of that money is being spent on it. So why aren't they doing anything to take care of it? You got me. I don't know. So it's definitely an issue that needs to be dealt with. But when you have people fighting for it, people fighting against it that live right there, I mean, what are they supposed to do? I mean, I don't know how they're. I'm just surprised that they even allowed it for them to do uranium mining again. I'm shocked that they would even let it happen again. But I don't live there, and I probably won't just for that reason. Not that I could, anyways, but because I'm not Navajo. So, I mean, I don't know if they'd let me live there. I could ask them, but I wouldn't live anywhere near uranium mining is going on. That's for sure.
We had somebody ask where they can follow you on social media.
Oh, excellent. Instagram, it's Geronimo Vela. Just do a search on Geronimo. You can't miss me. I'm there. Bam, there's my picture. I'm on Twitter also under Geronimo Vela. I think Geronimo Vela 1. I'm on YouTube. My YouTube page is Geronimo Vela. You can see my documentaries. I'll try to post up some other stuff. And you can go on IMDb and see a lot of my clips and stuff from my acting stuff. So IMDb, so it's Geronimo Vela. So, but if you want to look at my academic stuff, you can go to UCLA Anthropology website, go to grad students, and look up Jaime Geronimo Vela. That's my academic name, is my full name. My acting, I just go by Geronimo Vela. But yeah, trust me, if you Google me on the internet, boom, I will pop right up there. You can't miss me. So I guess I'm getting quite popular. I don't know. Hopefully in a good way.
Let's see. me read through these real quick.
Cool.
Saying, thank you very much. I enjoyed listening to you speak. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. I'll look into your book. I'm always looking for something great to read, which teaches me something new and intriguing.
Nice. Excellent.
Martha says, I think unfortunately in the history of this country, it's only justified when fighting is done by an American and no one else.
True.
Yeah. Carolyn says the radiation and poisoning is very similar to the oil pipelines they put on tribal lands, and it still leaks in the poisons in the water.
Very true.
And Brody says, I'm a reporter for the school paper. It's called The Breeze, and a freelance journalist. Do you think we could schedule an interview so I could write a profile piece on you?
Yeah, let's do it. Anytime, anytime. I like interviews.
Awesome.
Anytime I can
All
talk
right,
about my research and myself, I'm all for it.
All right, great. How can I contact you?
Well, you got my email is dristis@live.com. Should I put it in the chat? You want me to type it in the
Yeah,
chat?
go ahead.
Thank you.
Exactly. Oh, I should put up there. I can put it on YouTube in case you don't know how to spell my name. That's the YouTube page. So you can subscribe to me. Hey, if you go to check out YouTube, subscribe to me. I like to have a lot of subscribers. I don't have that many. I feel like I'm not loved. Just kidding. Yeah, anytime. I'm glad to interview. That rocks. And check out my
Thank you
documentaries.
very
I mean,
much.
they're very informative and educational. Yes, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Anybody else have any questions?
Any questions? They didn't have to be about anthropology. You can ask me about the acting. That's okay too. Hey, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm an open book, man. I'm open book.
I
You
do
guys
have
are
a question.
Oh, hit me, Naomi. Go ahead.
I'm a
Did I
theater
say your
arts
name right?
major. No, it's no Emmy, like no Emmy award, no Emmy.
Noemi. Oh, Noemi. Oh, man. You know, I have a BFA in theater also. I didn't know
Oh,
that,
nice.
did you?
I'm a theater arts major, but how do I say, how do you balance your acting life aside with your student life? Because I am trying to balance it. But I mean,
Well, that's tough. That's tough. There are times when I've had to pass on a good deal of an acting gig because I couldn't get out of uh, my school thing commitment. So, but there are other times where I was like, I'm a TA also, teaching assistant. So I teach discussion sections. So I've had to get people to cover for me so I can make auditions and stuff like that. And even to go film stuff. The good thing is I don't know if it's good or not, but so far I haven't got anything where I've gotten a part where I've had to do like 3 or 4 weeks of straight filming, which would be an issue for me during the school year. So I haven't run into that situation yet. So I don't know if that's good or bad because I'd rather have a 3 or 4 week filming gig because that means I'd be a good role and making good money. So, so, but if I wasn't TAing, it wouldn't be an issue for me anymore because I don't take classes anymore. So now I just work on my dissertation. So, but when you have a job, it's hard I got to call out of my job. But when you're teaching, it's like, it's kind of hard to call out on a teaching job because they still paid their money to be taught. So they want to be taught. So it's tough. But then it comes, you have to, when you get that opportunity, you have to do the pros and cons. Like, is it worth it or is it not? Like, can it lead to something? Can I make it work? I feel like there's always a way to make it work, especially because my professors all know that I'm an actor too. So they know that that's part of my career goals is to teach anthropology at the university level and be an actor at the same time, do both. So they're usually pretty understanding. So, you know, you just it's tough, but uh, you know, there's sometimes I wish I was doing one or the other, but I don't know it definitely keeps me busy. I'll give you that. So, I mean, but you can make it work. Don't give up. You can do it. You can do it. It's tough. You'll be alone a lot. You won't date ever, but because you'll have no social life. But I have no social life at all, especially, and it's even worse now that the pandemic hit. Who am I gonna meet? Can't go anywhere to meet anybody. So that's even worse. So who am I gonna meet? So yeah, you're single a lot. So just get used to that. I mean, if you're not single now, I don't know. I don't know you. So, but you can make it work. Just watch a lot of TV,
Sounds good.
instead of dating.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I posted a link to Jamie's IMDb page. So
Sweet.
yeah, so you guys can check that out if you were interested in seeing some of the projects that he's done in the past. And then the YouTube page, I can post that in the chat box too.
Yeah. Oh, I was on Westworld. I was Ghost Nation. I was one of the Ghost Nation natives up in there. So, and I was on To Tell the Truth. I was actually the imposter, but I was so good at portraying the truth that most everybody picked me to be the one telling the truth, but I was actually lying. But I'm not saying that I'm a good liar. I'm just a good actor. I'm an actor. So, hey, you know what? If you believe it to be true, so will others. See, that's the key to acting. If you believe it, then hey, everybody else say, well, he believes it. It must be true. He's confident. So I was like, sweet. So it was fun doing that. It was pretty fun to get everybody to pick me. Although I did feel kind of bad when they picked me and then they didn't get points because they picked me. I felt kind of bad for them. Like, oh, dang it. I didn't mean to really deceive you. so, so I felt kind of bad, but at the same time, I was like, yes, I rock. So it was fun. And I did one of those court case things where they do the court reenactment, and I was one of the like Judge Judy type of thing. Oh, it was Justice with Judge Maybelline. And I mean, we had the actual case, so we had to, but a lot of it was improv, and we had the certain facts, but then everything else was improv. So that was pretty fun. I actually was nervous, even though I knew it was fake. I was nervous when you're in front of a judge. I'm like, they might get me for something. I don't know what. I'm being set up or something. So I was actually nervous to be in front of a judge, even though I knew it was all fake. I wasn't even my case, but I was like, it's a judge in front of me. I gotta watch what I say, how I say it. So I was like, I shouldn't be this nervous. This is not real. But I was, man. You go in front of a judge, you get nervous. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. But it's fun. I enjoy acting, man. Acting it's a challenge every role you do, and I love a challenge. So yeah.
So I linked also his YouTube channel, but as he mentioned, probably the easiest way is just put in Geronimo Vela and he'll be the first hit every time. In fact, we hadn't
Every
talked
time.
for a couple years because I left Facebook a long time ago. And so I was like, I want to talk to Jamie again. So I just Googled his name and it was real easy to find him. And then it was so exciting that I was like, we're both in California now. We're neighbors again because we used to live in New Mexico. So now it's like,
Yeah.
look, we're neighbors again. We can reconnect. So that's probably the easiest
Yeah.
way to Google that. And you can find his IMDb page or any of the other kind of social media type stuff. Huh?
Yeah, and I got other publications out there too. So a big publication on NAGPRA because I'm trying to get the president. I've tried it for 3 presidency terms at this point to posthumously give a pardon to Geronimo because he was a prisoner of war till the day he died. And so when you die, does that mean you're not a prisoner anymore? He's still buried on Fort Sill. So to me, it's like I can't repatriate him as long as they still have ownership of him because he's a prisoner of war. So I tried to get it with Barack, didn't get no response. Well, I got a response, but it was like, hey, thank you for contacting. We appreciate it. It's always good to hear. Yeah, whatever. Obviously, I sent it to Trump, didn't get no response at all. So that wasn't going to happen because we know he don't like the natives. So he wants to take all their land as it is. Well, he did. He can't anymore. And I've sent it to Biden, but it's only been a few weeks. So I'm still hoping I'll hear something from him.
Well, maybe create a petition. I'll send it out to my students, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I mean,
Hey, that's not a
petitions
bad
have
idea.
power, you know, because you can get millions of people to sign things. And then if they see that there's a lot of people who think that repatriation is important, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, for Native American remains, it's definitely important.
Yeah.
And not just bones, but also cultural remains for funerary objects and stuff. So yeah, that's a great article I have on there about Geronimo repatriation with NAGPRA for any anthropologists out there. So that's cool. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Definitely.
thank you for
That rocks.
joining us. I really appreciate that you were able to take the time to talk about both Navajo culture and Apache culture, give them some insights to, you know, the reservation and everything like that. I think this was really, really beneficial for everybody who was able to join in. And I've recorded this session. So for my students, I will post this on Canvas so that if you want to rewatch any parts of that, you'll be able to do so. If you're not one of my students and you want a copy of the recording, you can reach out to me. I posted my email and I can do that again in the chat box here. And I can always email it to you because I know we might have some students from UCLA that might want a copy of the recording or something like that. Just let me know and then I can always send it to you. Okay.
Yeah, I also have I should put my academic email address too. So .edu. There you go. So in case you want to do the school address. So yeah, if you could email me that recording also so I can send it to my professors in my department. You know, I got to promote myself even with the professors. It never stops, man. You know, you got to show you're doing right by the department, you know.
Well, you get to add it to your CV now,
marketing.
too. Invited guest speaker at Chaffey College.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that rocks. Yeah, look at there. I got another entry. Yeah. Remember that, Noemi. I got to remember that. Noemi. I'm going to get Noemi. I'm still working on my first Emmy too. So we'll get it. We'll get it, Noemi. We'll get it. Keep plugging. Keep plugging. All right. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. And thanks, Allison, for even thinking of me to invite me to do this. It's an honor.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate
You rock.
it. Have a good Friday, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
All right, everybody, and have a good weekend. It was great seeing you, and thanks for all the great questions. And hey, I love talking about my research. So if Allison needs me to come back again, I will.
All right.